So welcome to this live stream, late as it is, better late than never. So this one is about creativity, and it's about a new course that we're running at Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, and it's called The Artist's Way. So The Artist's Way is actually a book. This is my copy with lots of sticky things in it and lots of highlighting and stuff. The Artist's Way. Let me have a look. So it's by Julia Cameron. I actually got onto this book last year, at least a year ago, when at work we all emailed around our books that we'd loved and wanted to recommend and suggest to the other staff members, which was actually a really good creative idea. This one came up, thank you to Emma, our wonderful CEO, because this book is amazing. I've read it a couple of times. I still do some of the tools from it, not all of them. But there's some that I really commit to and would like to go back through and do it. So if we run this group, I will be running this group, and I'm really looking forward to diving into it more, hopefully with some other people who can join me on the journey through this book. So the subtitle of this book, or the subheading, sorry, I should say, is A Course in Discovering and Rediscovering Your Creative Self. So please don't be put off by the title, The Artist's Way, because you think, I'm not an artist, like I don't paint or I don't draw or whatever notion you have in your head about what being an artist is. This book is very, very, very much about your creativity, and we're all creative beings. We were created through an act of ultimate creativity between two people to produce a child. The magic of that is an incredibly creative process, and that is alive and well in us still. Well, it might not be very well as adults. When we're children, we're still really engaged and connected, for most children anyway, engaged and connected with our creative selves, our creative sides. Children just live in the moment. They're very much here and now. And they're playing, they have this wonder about the world, which we often lose as adults. I know many of us do. We kind of get swamped by responsibilities and goals and setbacks, and we go off on different paths. And in a funny kind of way, sometimes we forget who we are, and we certainly forget or cut off from that inner child within us, or that creative little spirit, that playful person that once was inside of us. And now we're sort of adult like this. And sometimes we might find that there's something kind of missing in our lives, or we're missing a part of ourselves, or we long to get back some of that energy and some of that passion, certainly passion for life, and that innate kind of curiosity and creativity that children live in every single day. When we're all babies, we became very curious about, the world around us and about our own bodies. We're like, what are these hands? What are my feet? We see kids sort of sucking on their feet and sucking on their hands, sucking on anything and everything. And they start to get, as they get older, you start to see this kind of natural, that curiosity expand into real creativity, and they play. And play is sort of a child's job. It's their main language. It's how they understand the world. It's how they communicate. It's how they figure things out. Basic kind of cause and effect. If I build this tower and then I push it, what happens? You're like, no, they're learning all the time. And I think it's really easy for us as adults to forget that and forget that within us. So this book is very much about creative recovery, she calls it, and sort of reconnecting ourselves to that part of ourselves that we have lost. So it's very much a journey. And the book, if you've read the book, or if you do come along to this course, which will be fully online, by the way, we're going to run it because we still have some restrictions around contact and social distancing and stuff like that. We're going to run it as a fully online interactive course. We're going to use Zoom, which is going to be a bit new for me, but I'm loving learning all this new technology, even though it gets a little glitchy at times. And the course is going to run for 12 weeks. It's actually going to run over the course of 14 weeks, but there's going to be 12 active weeks. So it's going to be broken up to 6 weeks where we meet every week, and then 2-week break over the next school holidays, the winter school holidays, and then coming back for another 6 weeks. So it's quite long, which can be challenging for some people. But I very much believe the more you put into something, the more you get out of something, and that applies for so much of our lives. It's 2 hours at a time that we meet in these little, what Julia, the author of the book, calls creative clusters or sacred circles, where we read, we would have read a chapter that week, and we come to meet, this time online, and discuss what we've read, what we're doing in terms of some of the tasks and activities. This process, this journey, this book, this course is very hands-on. It does require you to commit to doing a fair amount of your own work. So some of that work is doing writing every single day, and this is regardless of whether you are a writer or not, for any person. She calls these morning pages, and you need to write 3 of them. Don't let that put you off. Certainly when I started, some days I'd write 3 pages, sometimes I'd write 1, sometimes I wouldn't write anything, and I'd just kind of do 2 pages, every 2 days or whatever. That's okay. I do what you can, kind of thing. But the morning pages are very much part of this journey. I write in a book that's I think it's called a B5 size. I'm not going to write a whole A4 size every day. That's a lot. It takes a lot. It does admittedly take some time. So I write 3 it's sort of 3/4 of the page of an A4. This year I've committed to writing every single day, and I have managed to do that. And look, honestly, sometimes I write it in the afternoon. I just don't have time in the morning, or to be really honest, I haven't organized myself enough in the morning or gotten up early enough in the morning, because I probably went to bed too late the night before to get up early and write them. And they've been a really interesting part of the journey for me. So when the purpose of the morning pages, there's a few. So I'm just going to read off my notes here from the book. For Julia, the author of the book, the morning pages are very much a primary tool of creative recovery. And remember, this is a journey of recovery, of recovering, of discovering and rediscovering all the creative aspects of yourself. The morning pages also ideally alert you, or they will, to your inner power. They will sort of awaken you to your interior, because for anyone who already writes or journals already, what comes out is very, very interesting, I have to say, and sometimes nothing like what you expect at all. Certainly in the beginning for me, particularly when I really committed to writing 3 pages every day, and there's no right or wrong with the morning pages. You can write out your dreams. Many times I write out my dreams. You can write about stuff that's just irritating you. You can write about what's happening that day. It doesn't really matter at all. You can bitch and whine and complain in those pages. What I found though was that by the time I got to the 3rd page, I'd sort of unloaded all the junk. It kind of helps you. It's this incredible process of, it's like when you do some cooking and you boil a pot of something, and this kind of layer at the top forms of like fat and junk or whatever, and you kind of skim it off. The morning pages kind of help you do that for the day, or for that 24 hours. And I sort of found the first 2 pages did that. And often by the time I was writing on the 3rd page, I started to have some really interesting insights, which I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have gotten had I not been writing, had I not been journaling and doing these morning pages. So very much in that way, it does explore your interior world, your inner world, your kind of inner power starts to come out, and you start to kind of find creative solutions for problems that you have, or these little ideas just drop in. Or you might be writing about something that's really bothering you or upsetting you, And then suddenly this idea comes into your head about what to do about that. So it's a very intuitive process. And I think very much getting in touch with your creativity is about getting back in touch with your intuition, which we all have to a lesser or greater extent. And what I mean by that is I believe we all have the same amount of intuition, of that kind of gut instinct about things. It's just about how in tune we are to that part of ourselves, how in tune we are to our bodies, and really listening to those little voices. It's not even a voice, certainly not for me. It's just a sense of something, not even a feeling. I can't even articulate what it is. And by doing something like the morning pages, which she calls a form of meditative practice, which is great because you can tick that box off if you're wanting to do meditation as well. You're like, oh, I've done my morning pages. Often I find I do some meditation as well. But on that note, I think any sort of activity where you are still and quiet and there is this focused attention on something, whether that's morning pages, whether that's a meditation of some sort, whether that's yoga. Personally, I find yoga often focuses me into myself and my body in a way that no other activity does. And sometimes I get a lot of emotion coming up, or sometimes I get a lot of, well, not a lot, but some insights. I just get these answers popping into my head about a problem that I was thinking about 3 days ago. So when we commit to doing an act like the morning pages every day, we are opening ourselves up to that possibility. And I think that's part of that creativeness wakening up inside of us that is very much about your intuition and listening to it. So you gain insights, you clear out the kind of muck. You sometimes, she writes about it. I guess it depends what kind of creative activity you're interested in, or your hobbies and stuff like that. For her, she found some characters from books or plays that have showed up. She just started thinking about them and writing them. And you might suddenly find that you get all these sort of ideas of where to head with your creative endeavors. Journaling and the morning pages, I find, is a really good way of reflection and of self-observation, because you're watching and listening to your thoughts in a way. You're documenting them and you're like, look at that, look what's coming out there. And sometimes for me, I might start with the morning page, start a topic on the morning pages. I start thinking about something and thinking, I really want to write about this. I need to kind of process this and work it out. But it's almost like the pen leads me in another way, and suddenly I'm writing about something really different, but that needed to be processed and thought about and reflected upon. And then I go, wow, isn't that interesting? That's what came out. That's kind of where my head and my pen went. It's absolutely fascinating. And like I said, it's a really important tool for absolutely anyone who wants to awaken or get back in touch with their creativity. So what is creativity anyway? I think there's many definitions of that. There's probably a standard definition in a dictionary somewhere. I'm going to read some stuff from the book about what Julia Cameron, how she defines creativity. She talks about it being the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. Like I said, that we are born from a very, very creative act. So for her, there are 10 basic principles of she calls them spiritual principles of the book in relation to creativity. And look, on that note, this book is certainly another kind of subtitle of the book is A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. Sometimes this may put people off. They may think, I'm not spiritual at all, I'm not religious, and we're absolutely not talking about religion. Spirituality can have many meanings for many people, or it might mean nothing at all, and that's totally fine. Throughout the book, she does talk about God in however you conceive a God to be. I tend to use the term universe. That really works for me. and my beliefs. Sometimes she'll use the term great creator that has created us in the world or whatever. Or you can just use energy, use the word energy, or flow is a really good one as well. So you can kind of swap out words there that fit for you and what you believe. I guess it's just important to observe that process for you and what happens when you go, whoa, wait, what's all this woo-woo stuff? Is it really religious or is it really spiritual? I don't really believe in anything. You don't have to believe in anything at all. You have to just believe in the process and to learn to trust yourself. She does certainly talk in this book a lot about faith and having basically faith in the process and the journey, hence it being connected to spirituality. So creativity and spirituality kind of going hand in hand in that way. When she talks about faith, really, and this certainly fits for me and what I believe, having faith in yourself, certainly if you're going down a path that is a bit different, it takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of courage as well. She talks about, you might have heard this quote, leap and the net will appear. So this is very much a theme throughout this book, which I personally loved, really worked for me, and learning to kind of trust the process and to let go of some beliefs about things or the way you do things, which many of us struggle with, even though we may really want to stop doing certain things and start doing new things or awaken some old things. Often there's a lot of resistance and blocks there, and she certainly talks a lot about blocks and creative blocks, which is incredibly important, I think, for moving through your journey towards a more creative and expansive life. I'm going to talk a little bit about blocks in a little while. I'm kind of mindful that I'm slightly jumping all over the place here. But I wanted to go back to those 10 principles that she talked about. So I'm going to read from the book directly here, so just mind my eyes looking away. The following principles are the bedrock of which creative recovery and discovery can be built. So basic principles. 1, creativity is the natural order of life. Life is energy, pure creative energy. 2, there is an underlying, indwelling creative force infusing all of life, including ourselves. 3, when we open ourselves to our creativity, we open ourselves to the Creator's creativity within us and ourselves. My top's wonky. 4, we are ourselves creations. We are. And we, in turn, are meant to continue creativity by being creative ourselves. Creativity is God or the universe gift to us. Using our creativity is a gift back to the universe. The refusal to be creative is self-will and is counter to our true nature. 7, when we open ourselves to exploring our creativity, we open ourselves to the universe, to God, in a good, orderly direction. I guess it kind of gives us a bit of structure there and a path. 8, as we open our creative channel to the Creator, many gentle but powerful changes are to be expected. 9, it is safe to open ourselves up to greater and greater creativity. And 10, our creative dreams and yearnings come from a divine source. As we move towards our dreams, we move towards our divinity. I just love it. That's just incredibly beautiful, incredibly powerful stuff. So I found reading through this book almost mind-blowing. Sometimes it was like every page I was like, oh my God, yes, oh my God, wow, oh my God, this is amazing. But that was just me, and that's, I guess, where I'm at in my life right now. It really sang to me. And I really hope by running a group around this book and using this book very actively as a tool to go along each week as a group, that people get so much out of it than ticking along on your own. And that is the beauty of a group, really. Even though we're not going to be able to do it in person, there is something very powerful about a group and the group process in that you have to show up every week. You get to listen to other people's stories. You kind of helps you feel much less alone when you hear other people's struggles and joys and stuff like that, or similarities or differences. It really helps you feel more connected as well. And I really hope a book like this and a group like this helps people feel that deep connection as well, to themselves, to other people going on this creative journey, and to that source or the universe or whatever, or nature, whatever it is that you personally believe in. I want to go back to creative blocks and barriers. So in the book, she very much, like I mentioned before, she really, really, really focuses on that, because they're huge. I think, whether it's trying to change ourselves and to be more creative, or any other area of our lives, when it comes to change, real change, we're up against our own selves. We're up against the voices in our head, our thoughts, our inner critic, and included in that would be, beliefs like, I'm too old to do that. What are other people going to think about me? I don't know how to do it. Why would I bother? I'm just going to fail anyway. Nobody else is doing this. Like, why do I want to do it? There would be an infinite number. So particularly when we talk about creativity and being kind of blocked creatives, they are rampant in your mind and in your life. They would be shown in your behaviors somehow. So we need to work through them. And when you read this book and when you do all of the stuff in it, you're allowing yourself to work through those blocks, to challenge them, to sort of forgive yourself, and let yourself be creative. So very much in this book, Julia talks about, it's not teaching you to be creative, it's teaching you to let yourself be creative. And for me, that really makes a lot of sense. I think for so many of us out there, on some level, we want permission, or we wait for permission to do something. We just want to be asked, or we want to see other people doing it first, and we're scared to take a leap of faith, essentially. And we're just waiting for that right moment, or till I have enough money, or till I finish this thing, or till my children go to school, or till my children leave home, or till, when I finish this job, when I finish this degree, one day. And there's one day itis, where one day may never come, because if you're always sticking it out there in the future, you're very much sacrificing yourself in that way, and any opportunity to just freaking do it kind of thing, to just jump off the deep end and give yourself a chance. I think one of life's tragedies is perhaps coming to the end of one's life and regretting stuff that you never tried. I personally believe, this may not fit for everyone, but I personally believe it's kind of better to regret something that you did do and you tried and it failed, rather than always wishing that you had done that thing. I imagine many of us have that already, certainly for me, I'm in my 40s, so I look back and go, I really wish I had done that when I was that age or whatever. I can still do it. There's no reason why I can't do numerous things in my life. It's just kind of what blocks come up against in my head, plus also acknowledging the realistic obstacles in one's life if you have children and commitments and stuff like that. We can't always just travel around the world at a whim. Many of us don't have that kind of means and money, but this, in theory, there's probably ways to do it. We just tell ourselves we can't. So blocks. So I want to talk about, there's some of the blocks here that she talks about that show up creatively. She mentions jealousy being a really big one, which kind of makes sense if we're kind of jealous of someone who's particularly creative or living a really artistic kind of life. Secretly, we can be like, oh, I really wish that was me. And when I really think that through, there's a sorrow associated with that. When we become very jealous and envious of someone else, it's because perhaps they're living a life that we want to be living and we're not giving ourselves permission to. Hence this process being about learning to let yourself be creative and to go on that creative path and just to see where it leads. So some blocks might be telling yourself it's too late. I think that's a really big one. Another one, waiting until you've made enough money to do something you really love, like I just said. You might tell yourself, oh, this is just my ego. I'm just really selfish. Whenever you're yearning for something more or something creative to do in your life, you might be like, no, that's just a really, selfish thing to do. And I need to focus on everyone else in my life instead of me. That's essentially what you're saying there. Another block might be some thoughts around just telling yourself that your dreams don't matter. That they're only dreams and you should be more sensible. And when I read that, this is when I hear that kind of adult absolutely squashing that inner child. Children are full of dreams and hopes and wishes. The world is their oyster. And so it should be. And when we're out of balance as adults and not in touch with all these little aspects of ourselves, one side of us tends to dominate all the other ones, and that would be for a reason. It's probably a strategy that we have developed over time to make sense of something or to cope with a difficult situation, and often we carry those patterns and strategies through with us to adult life. But telling yourself your dreams don't matter and that you should be more sensible, boy, is that harsh. And who says? Like, that to me is just a crazy kind of statement. Often though, with our blocks, we're coming up against our own inner critic, and the inner critic almost always started from an outside critical voice, usually a voice we heard growing up. Might have been a parent, a caregiver, it might have been a friend, or maybe not a friend, maybe a bully or a teacher who told us certain things, and then we've just kind of incorporated that into ourselves, and we keep telling ourselves, I can't do that, I'm not talented enough for that, I'm not adventurous enough for that, I'm not whatever for that. And then it becomes our own critical voice. And it's heartbreaking, I think, when somebody genuinely believes that their dreams don't matter, because what they're saying is, I don't matter. And how could you not matter in your own life? This is your life. This is your life. Go and live it. Another block might be very much fearing. I just mentioned this before, fearing what your friends and family might think. They might think you're just damn crazy. Maybe they think that already. Who cares? And I say that flippantly, but I know that for many, many people, it's a real struggle to put that aside, to stop caring what other people think about you. At the end of the day, there's nothing we can do about what other people think about us. Perhaps in the morning pages, or going to therapy, you can explore what that's about and why that's so important to you. When we live our lives worrying about what other people think of us and trying to do the right thing, we are not being ourselves at all. We're trying to fit in. There's something really amiss with that, in that we're not connected to ourselves. The focus is so much on the outside world. What's everyone doing? What's everyone thinking? Should I agree with that? Or and kind of this morphing of yourself to fit different people or different situations or different relationships. And there's almost a complete loss of self in that, because you don't really know yourself, and you're not allowing yourself to work your way through those beliefs you have that it matters what other people think. I mean, do you sit around all day thinking about everyone in your life? Probably not. You're probably super busy or super whatever, and just focusing on your own little world, your own little projects or responsibilities there. Sometimes you might think, oh God, that person's an idiot, or they drive me really crazy, but you're probably not lying in bed at night stressing about the neighbour who irritates you at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning with a whippersnipper. Yes, that's very irritating. So anyway, that's a really important thing to work through, that fear of what other people are going to think of you. Particularly, I think it's particularly relevant in this field of wanting to activate your creativity and kind of step into an artist kind of zone, whatever that zone is. And when if people do judge you or label you or say you are being really stupid or crazy or irresponsible or whatever, that's their stuff. And in relation to this subject, Julia Cameron would argue that that's their jealousy and their inability to access those parts of themselves, and they're kind of projecting stuff onto you, we would say, in a psychologist-y kind of way. A final block she mentions here is telling yourself that creativity is a luxury and that you should be grateful for what you've got. This to me just screams of a really harsh inner parent, which you may have had growing up, that again has sort of been incorporated and internalized, and now it lives in your head, and you're sort of going, you know what, it's wrong for me to dream these things. It's wrong for me to believe that there's something more for me, and I've just got to be grateful. And look, absolutely, it's incredibly important to be grateful and thankful for what you have in your life. And it's not a but, it's an and. You can have more. Think of how big the damn universe is. It's a freaking big place that can't even measure it. Yes, we have a finite period of time on Earth alive, and we live in a finite world. The Earth is round. We're very limited in that way. We can't just travel to the edge of the universe. But there is so much potential for us to still do, particularly if we are stuck in that kind of one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do that, or I'm not going to give myself that. I'm not going to allow myself to dream. I'm not going to allow myself to have that luxury. Why do we see art and creativity as a luxury? And I think that's very dominant in our society, the way that so like in a political way, the way the arts areas of society are funded, for instance. Often it's a struggle to get funding for art programs to get up and running or to keep running, kind of thing, because for some reason we don't tend to value what they offer, and they do. If you think about the things throughout history that have changed the world and changed humanity, it's not just books and learnings and stuff like that. It's art as well. Art is a reflection of the time and the context. Art is very powerful in what it communicates, and it's very symbolic. Obviously, art can be hugely symbolic of what a person believes or feels or wants to communicate. People use art all the time to spread political messages and stuff like that. But again, we kind of shove it, even as a society. We don't position it as a high priority. And it needs to be, even if we're not talking about art per se, if we're thinking about creativity every single day, whether you realize it or not, you're probably using some sort of creativity muscle in your brain. Okay, so last night I was watching MasterChef. I admittedly love that show, and one of the contestants was in a pressure test, immunity, I don't know, pressure test, elimination. That's right, elimination thing. And he was making something, and he kind of stuffed it up. And he was going to just turf it, and start again whilst still trying to cook all these other little components. And he started making the second batch, and then realized he didn't have enough time for starters. They have, it's on a 1 hour time limit. But then thought, which I thought was very clever, actually I'm going to get that old batch that I thought I had stuffed up and do something different. So he actually sieved it, like pushed it through a strainer he had lumps in this mixture, and it made it all thin, and it actually saved him. He didn't get eliminated, right? But as I was watching that, I was like, that is so creative, so cool. we use that creativity to problem solve. You know, you might be stuck in traffic and then you're like, wait, I can go this way, that way, and that way, kind of thing. And boom, there you go. So we just don't label it as being creative, you know, because, we're not painting a picture or drawing something or singing a song or writing a song. And on that note, I really want to encourage you to think really broadly about what art is and what being an artist or a creative is. You know, it's so much more than art that we think of. So I know for me, before I started this, I certainly thought, when I think of art, I always think of paintings, people who draw, people who do sculptures, actors, singers, performers, you know, they're artists, writers, yeah, for sure, they're artists, kind of thing. You know, people who do weird, crazy, kooky art installations and stuff like that. And then I was like, no, what about people who sew? Oh, yeah. Or do textiles? What about bakers or people who cook and cook really well? You know, I love MasterChef. I can't say I'm a brilliant cook, but what you see on that show, I know I'm talking about it a bit, but holy moly, the creativity that shows up. I mean, these people are pushed and they're under pressure, but the artistry of some of the food, if you've ever gone to a fancy restaurant, sometimes you don't want to eat the food. It's just so beautiful, you know. That's art. That's someone's creative mind showing up there on a plate of food. I mean, amazing. It could be scrapbooking, photography, design, knitting, crocheting, you know, any kind of crafty things. I don't know, you know, there's so many more. Forgive me if I haven't mentioned your particular kind of hobby or interest that is a bit creative for you. So just keep that in mind too, that you don't have to be a painter, you know, or a singer or a muso or something like that. Whatever is you define as creative is creative for you. Another point I wanted to talk about in the book, she talks a lot about synchronicity. So whether you believe in synchronicity or not, she believes in it, and it makes sense to me. So when she talks about synchronicity, it was Carl Jung who coined the term synchronicity a few decades ago. And that was kind of, his definition was a series of meaningful coincidences showing up in your life. I think we've all experienced that and the wonder of that. And for me, when that happens personally to me, it's a signal that I'm on the right path and that things are kind of flowing, you know, and I'm not resisting things. In the book and throughout this journey, you will see synchronicity show up. Absolutely. I certainly saw it the more I did morning pages, and when I really focused particularly on synchronicity, suddenly I could see it everywhere. You know, maybe it was under my nose the whole time, but suddenly I could see it. Who cares? Suddenly I could see it and it made sense to me. She very much talks about synchronicity getting triggered by this process, and when we change, the universe furthers this and expands that change, and kind of on it goes. And it's miraculous in a way. I also wanted to mention in the course, in the group, in the book, it's 12 weeks because there are 12 chapters, right? Let me find them. 12 weeks. So for us in the course, we work through each chapter each week. Perhaps if you were doing this on your own or in a different group, it might be every fortnight or whatever kind of works for you. Because I have to say, sometimes it is quite intense and you certainly may not get through everything. So what are the 12 weeks? Week 1, recovering a sense of safety. I'm just going to go through them all and then talk a little bit more about what each one is. Week 2, recovering a sense of identity. Week 3, recovering a sense of power. Week 4, recovering a sense of integrity. Week 5, recovering a sense of possibility. Week 6, recovering a sense of abundance. Week 7, recovering a sense of connection. Week 8, recovering a sense of strength. Week 9, recovering a sense of compassion. Week 10, recovering a sense of self-protection. Week 11, recovering a sense of autonomy. And week 12, recovering a sense of faith. Like I mentioned, faith is actually weaved throughout the whole book. So if I just look really quickly at the little subheadings of each chapter, I'm not going to have time to go through all of them. But maybe these will help you understand what each week or each chapter is about. So week 1, recovering a sense of safety. In this, she looks at what she calls shadow artists. So this is about people. It may well be you. You wanted to be a great actor, and instead of doing that, you're like an agent. I'm just giving examples. You're an agent for an actor, or you work, in the periphery of acting. So maybe you work more behind the scenes, but secretly you want to be an actor. Or maybe you're an actor, but you've always actually wanted to be a director. And instead of being a director, you're an actor instead, because you don't quite believe that you've got it to be a director. So that's being a shadow artist, because you're in the shadow of your own artist. She talks about the enemy within in the sense of safety week. Core negative beliefs, really important. Your ally within, affirmative weapons, creative affirmations, and then each week there are little tasks to do and check-ins. So the tasks are the morning pages, the standard tasks that run throughout the whole thing, morning pages, and also something she calls an artist date. So an artist date, so you take yourself on a date each week. For me, at first, I was a bit confused by this. I was like, what does that actually involve? But it can kind of involve whatever you want. It's not like you've got to go out and wine and dine yourself. Hey, if you want to go do that, you can do that. It is about kind of connecting with yourself and that creative, playful side of yourself. So almost like your inner child. So you might, say there was a game or an activity that you really loved as a child and you haven't played it for 20, 30 years or something like that. You go out and you find that and you go and play it. It might involve going to a playground and just kind of sitting on the swings and having a little slide, kind of thing, or going to buy yourself your favorite food that you loved as a child, or going to find a toy that you used to love, or just going to a toy shop and just kind of hanging out and like buying a nice little toy for yourself, for your nephew kind of thing, or something like that for your child. Can be, I went and got at the supermarket. It's amazing. You don't even have to go to like a craft store. At the supermarket, I found these bottles of glue and other kind of stuff. I don't know what's in it, and you mix it together and it makes slime. I'm going to buy that and I'm going to make myself slime. I'm 44 and I went and did that, and it was so much fun. So I kind of took myself on a little shopping date and I made that, and it was really cool. So that's just kind of an example. So every week you have morning pages and you go on a bit of an artist date for yourself, as well as set tasks to do with the theme of that week. So then week 2, recovering a sense of identity. So the little subheadings here, she talks about different people and personalities in your life that are contributing to your creative blocks. So she talks here about going sane, poisonous playmates, crazy makers in your life, skepticism that you struggle with, attention, rules of the road. I know that doesn't quite make sense now, but it certainly does when you read the book. Recovering a sense of power, and often we have certainly lost our creative power within ourselves, so really important. She covers anger, she covers synchronicity, she covers shame, really big one. Dealing with criticism, detective work, going on a bit of an exercise there, and growth. In week 4, recovering a sense of integrity. This is about making some honest changes, digging up some buried dreams, really confronting stuff at times. And she says here reading deprivation. I can't actually remember what that is right off the top of my head. Sorry about that. Week 5, when we're recovering a sense of possibility. And this is a great one, because when you've cut yourself off from any kind of dreams or hopes or wishes that you could engage with that creative side of your life and pick up a hobby that you secretly always wanted to do, even if it's, I was just thinking before, like on YouTube, there are so many people doing like makeup artistry and stuff like that. I mean, the talent of some of these people is phenomenal. And now we have this medium called the internet and something like YouTube, and there would be many other social media platforms that you can learn. You can learn stuff and learn it for free, and then you can share it with people and showcase your stuff, or get help from people to do that. I mean, it's an exciting time. There's never been a better time or opportunity in throughout time to do things than right now. Where was I? Recovering a sense of possibility. So this is very much about hope. So she talks about limits, finding the river, the virtue trap quiz, forbidden joys. There's a bit of an exercise there, and another exercise is called wish list. Again, really lovely, because that is about reconnecting and getting back in touch with yourself, those lost parts of yourselves that you've just buried away and thought, I'm not even going to think about that stuff anymore. I'm not even going to allow myself. I'm not going to give myself permission to wish or hope that I could ever go there, that I could ever pick up that hobby. Another hobby, I was just thinking, jewelry making, metalwork, that kind of stuff. I used to do some of that many years ago, kind of thing. Really creative opportunities there. Recovering a sense of abundance in week 6. This is about the great creator, so certainly some stuff around the universe and God there. Luxury, counting, which she calls an exercise, and money madness. So with this theme of abundance, she really challenges that notion that many people have, that is that to be an artist or to be a creator or really creative person means you're going to be really broke kind of thing, that you're just going to be like a broke, struggling artist. And that is not true. That is part of a belief set that many people have. So in that luxury thing recovering a sense of abundance, when she talks about luxury, I do remember that one, because she encouraged you every week to go and do something or buy something, whatever's kind of manageable for you, that you would consider luxurious for yourself. So for her, that is having fresh flowers in the house all the time. That really resonated with me, so I went out there and bought myself some flowers. For other people, it might be, buying. Sometimes I think of food when I think of this, and kind of expensive food that you wouldn't otherwise allow yourself. If you want to buy, say, blueberries or raspberries that are out of season, they're like $10 for a punnet or something crazy, and that's a real luxury. And often we go, well, I can't afford it, or I don't deserve that, or I can't justify that. And of course you've got to weigh that up with your life and your finances. But sometimes there are many other different ways to indulge in some luxuriousness and kind of create more of a sense of abundance in your life, way beyond material abundance. So that's really interesting. In week 7, recovering a sense of connection, that covers listening, perfectionism, risk, jealousy, doing a bit of an exercise around jealousy, and doing an exercise on archaeology, so really kind of digging up some stuff there. Week 8, recovering a sense of strength. She looks at survival, the ivory power, she calls it. Gain disguised as loss, a really important topic, I just think, generally, to learn about that and to kind of help shift your mindset from whatever, oh gosh, I've lost this thing or this person or this opportunity, instead to see it as what I've actually gained from this perceived loss. She talks about in this week on strength, age and time, product and process, early patternings, really, really important stuff to look at some of the early family of origin stuff. Week 9, recovering a sense of compassion. She looks at fear, enthusiasm, creative U-turns, and blasting through blocks, those creative blocks. Week 10, recovering a sense of self-protection. She looks at dangers of the trail, workaholism, drought, fame, and competition. Really interesting. Week 11, recovering a sense of autonomy. And this, she looks at acceptance, success, the zen of sports, really interesting. I'm not really a sports person. Building your artist's altar, beautiful symbolic stuff to do there. And finally, in the last week, about recovering a sense of faith. The topics in this week are trusting, mystery, the imagination at play, and escape velocity. Awesome stuff going on there. So that is kind of a really rough, squished up outline of the Artist's Way book and what would be involved if you come along and join me in the Artist's Way group or course. I'm not even quite sure what to call it. It's kind of a course, but it's in a group as well. Or as she likes to say, sacred circle, or a creative cluster of people coming together. I really love that. You know, in any kind of group, there is a sacredness about that. And we would have rules and guidelines around confidentiality and keeping ourselves safe. You know, I think when you step into a group, you are allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and that can be quite challenging and difficult. Particularly when you're exploring stuff. And I know it kind of sounds funny perhaps to go, oh, what would be scary about exploring your creativity or your artistic side? And if you are blocked in any way, it's damn scary, because if you haven't been allowing yourself to access those parts of yourself, it is kind of scary in one way. And being in a group and sharing some of those fears can be a little overwhelming at times and confronting. So hence I just want to reassure you that by being part of the group, we would have some guidelines around maintaining confidentiality, creating a really safe, nurturing space for us all to explore what we are discovering. Very much too in a group like this, the Artist's Way, in Julia's guidelines, the facilitator is very much part of the process. So all I would be doing is providing the space and the opportunity, and I would sort of be guiding things, but I'm very much going to be part of the process. I will be doing the tasks and going through the journey with everyone as well, which I really love, because it's going to push me a bit, which is fantastic, and push me into exploring some more creative stuff in me, but also just get us all even. We're all on the same sort of level here. It's the same playing field. We're all just stumbling along as humans on our own little creative journey called life. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up. I really hope this has been useful for you if you've been considering coming along to this course, or if you've just learned something right now about creativity or about this book and it's kind of piqued your interest, The Artist's Way. By all means, go and purchase a copy. Like I mentioned, you will need to have a copy to do the course, because you'll need to be reading through it. You might be able to find an electronic version online, or you might be like me and I actually physically like to have a book. I'm still a bit old-fashioned that way. If you have any questions about the group or the course or the book or anything to do with this stuff, absolutely drop us a line here at Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. You can message us through our Facebook page. You can email us through our website. You can call us. Many ways to communicate. Probably not carrier pigeon. We don't have that facility right now. So I wish you all the best. I'm hoping to be back next week to do another live stream. But in the meantime, I hope things are settling down for you in life. Things are making a little bit more sense. And I really hope you're taking care of yourself. All the best for this week. Bye.